SJ. Welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. SJ, Stone Go, Gary 5 Joho Jifkados, Mvskoke Radio, Mabo Hedget Wedgkis, and Donkon Chukai Yadika. Mogi. Good morning, Mogi. Welcome to a cloudy day. It's kind of a windy one, wants to be spring, but not quite yet. We have a wonderful chance to speak with our chief of the Lighthorse Tribal Police Department, Mr. Robert Hawkins, who's come in and was going to share their mission to help our Oglala Sioux brethren up in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. And if things work out, we might get you an idea of how the tax help results worked out for our loan fund folks. But first of all, good morning, sir. Welcome to our program. We appreciate you making it in and staying awake for me.
Yes, sir. Mido for having me this morning.
Okay, first of all, I know you guys got to be tired from a long drive, several days of intense work with the local people up there and then driving back. Have you recovered yet?
We are recovering, just trying to get back to our routine from this trip. It was exhausting, but we endured it and did well. We're glad to be home.
Now, how many officers did you take up again?
There were 6 of us, including myself.
Right, so you must have been really busy. First of all, did that have any impact on coverage of Creek Country here?
No, sir, it did not. We had adequate coverage for that, so we were able to take our team with us and do our mission.
Now, that was a volunteer mission, or were they assigned to this task?
We have a 13-man rapid response team, and we met with that team, and we wanted to see who was going to be able to go on this. We had some members had to stay behind, some were in training, and some had to, of course, cover shifts. So we were able to narrow it down to a 6-man team and did well with it.
Well, maybe you want to share the names of these guys, and let's give them a little bit of credit, too.
Absolutely. Deputy Chief Daniel Wins, Sergeant Leonard Stevens, Communications Supervisor Jeff Frank.
I do this too sometimes. So
I tell you, it's lack of sleep, I guess is what it is.
Well, if you remember them later, go ahead and pop them in.
We had Corporal Tyler Sands was with us also.
Okay. Now that's a pretty good crew, but...
and I'm sorry, I missed out on one, Investigator Larry Bannon.
Okay, that's 6?
That was 6, yes, sir.
Okay, so we've thanked them profusely for their effort here. Now, I know that you probably had this question tossed at you a lot of times, but let's do it again. Now, what I guess was your motivation for sending your team members and collecting supplies and all this? Why did you do it? Why was it so important?
Well, those are our Native brothers and sisters up north, and so when we started receiving information about what they were going through in the weeks prior to us receiving this information, and we got to looking into it and seeing how bad it actually was up there. We knew nothing about it until we started receiving phone calls from people that knew our officers down this way, and also Chief Floyd received an email in reference to what was going on up there also. So once we got that information, we started putting things together on our end. We did meet in cabinet meeting with Chief Floyd and made it known as to what our intentions were to get help up to the Oglala Sioux Nation up there. So at that point, we started getting that information out through social media, and started receiving donations at that time. We had a good response from the local community, area-wide, Tulsa, just within our tribal boundaries. We had great showing of support and received a bunch of donations, and it really helped those people up there.
I saw a really long trailer when I first came over there, and it was empty at that point. You were just starting to collect supplies to head north. Now, as I understand it, that trailer was packed when you finally took off.
Oh, it was full. We had every bit 400 cases of water, if not more, diapers, food, clothing. We had medical supplies. We had like toiletry kits and cleaning kits, and those were donated by the Choctaw Nation. And so we were full. And in fact, we were so full that when we left, we had to go over and weigh it. And so we went over across the street to the truck stop at Lowe's and weighed the trailer, and we were 800 pounds overweight. So we had to start taking stuff out and started to load it into the back of pickups and into the other trailer that we had, so that we could be underweight, so that we'd be able to pull it.
Well, that's kind of a happy occurrence in its own way, I guess.
It was. We actually had to turn away some folks, and not really turn away. We still accepted their donations. We just had no room to put it. So we've stored this stuff, the additional things that have came in, just in the event that we have to go back, or if we have to use it somewhere else.
Well, that's an intriguing thought there. What are the possibilities of you heading back up there?
Well, from what we're understanding is that there's supposed to be a rain event that's going to be coming in. I'm not sure if it's going to be this weekend or the first part of next week, but before we left, we were advised that there could be another major winter storm coming up in that area. And seeing what we did while we were up there, the magnitude of it, there was the weather was horrible, and they had a lot of snow that was dumped on them while we were there. So to add that on top of what happened several weeks ago, with the snow melt and the flooding they had before we went up there, that was the reason why we went up there, with the snow melt that they're going to have from this past storm, and on top of what may be coming, it could make it a critical situation for them again up there. And so we just let them know, if there's something that we can do, if it gets to that point where y'all need that help again, just let us know, and we'll start the process all over again.
What was the geography like? I've actually never been to Pine Ridge, but from what I've seen from a lot of photos and some friends and video and an ex-wife, we looked at it as kind of a flat rolling prairie, gullies that were pretty deep, and dirt roads, not much of an infrastructure. And as a matter of fact, that county is known as one of the poorest in the nation, I believe. So what did you encounter when you got there?
Well, as for terrain-wise, you have a lot of your rolling prairies through there, some flat lands. It just depends on what part of the reservation you're on. When you come into the southern part of it, it's fairly flat. You do have your rolling hills and everything, but once you get a little bit farther north into the reservations, you start coming into the Badlands, and so you have the terrain there that is rough, jagged, a lot of gullies and really rough terrain.
The road's pretty muddy.
Yes, you do have your paved highways, of course, your main thoroughfares through there, but a majority of the roads are unpaved. And so from what we saw, from what we could see, before all the snow was there, it's extremely muddy and difficult to get into those areas.
Did you get stuck anywhere?
Well, we had a few occasions where one of our trucks had issues in the snow, but we got out of it and everything was fine with it.
All right. Now, when you left, we were watching national weather reports, and it talked about another cyclone bomb, I think they were calling, headed for that region, and heavy snow is expected, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I hope our crew is going to be safe because they're heading right into the teeth of this storm. Did that actually develop? Were the roads something that you were concerned about?
The weather was brutal. When we on our trip up, everything was good. You know, we had good weather until we got up into the northwestern part of Nebraska, and it was at that point we started running into rain, and the winds really picked up at that point, and the cold set in. We spent the night in Chadron, Nebraska on Tuesday night. Actually, we got there early Wednesday morning. We checked into our room, slept for a couple hours, and then got on the road. Once we got up that morning, it had already started snowing. We stopped and had breakfast, and in that hour's time, from the time that we left our hotel to the restaurant and then come back out to leave to go over to Pine Ridge, there was probably several inches of snow on the ground, and it was just blowing. It was the road conditions were horrible, and it got worse from that point. Wednesday afternoon, evening, when we went back to our hotel, it was really bad, and Thursday was unspeakably bad.
Oh gosh, was there any point where you considered possibly aborting the effort for safety reasons?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We knew how bad the weather conditions were going to be prior to us leaving, and we did discuss it. You know, should we wait until this blows over and then go, or do we just go ahead and take the stuff? And it was a no-brainer at that point. We were going. Our minds were made up. We had everything set to go, and we were going. We felt like the longer that we wait to go, the more desperate these people are going to be up there on the reservation, and so we made that decision to go ahead and endure whatever we were going to face. And it was bad. The weather was really bad for us. The cold, just there was a lot of things that played into this trip, but the team did really well. You know, we were dedicated to what we were going to do with this, committed to this trip, and committed to helping out these people the best that we could.
Now, I attended a briefing session you did with your people, and it essentially said, prepare for the worst, and brutal weather, wet, snowy, muddy. Were your people really then prepared to deal with this? I mean, I know that determination has got to be a factor, but clothing-wise, boots, parkas, whatever.
Well, it gets cold down here in Oklahoma as well, so
oh, yeah.
we kind of know how to prepare for that. So we did just, like we did in the briefing, what we said we were going to do. We brought the necessary clothing, the necessary stuff to keep us warm. We just really, the scope of the weather up there, we really didn't expect it to be that bad. We knew it was going to be bad, but we didn't know, it was going to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
And once we encountered it, then, we made necessary adjustments to how we were going to dress and stuff we were going to need to endure the cold and the snow.
It amazes me to meet people who live in conditions like that or make that their home. Like in Alaska, you've got the Alaska natives and some of the toughest environment. But I noticed what I did was developed a whole new respect for people who can deal with that and make a life and a culture there. Did you get any feeling like that? Something that made you kind of appreciate their situations and their choices in life there?
Absolutely. We didn't get to meet as many people as we wanted to because of the areas that we had to get into. We just couldn't. It was impassable due to the snow and the mud and just the conditions overall in that rugged area. But we did meet some folks out there that you have to appreciate what they're doing. They've lived it, and they go about their business on an everyday basis. And so you see them out doing normal things, going to the store, driving through town or whatever, and those that came to the distribution point in Pine Ridge to pick up supplies, kind of visited with a few of them and just asked, how do you get in and out of your areas? How being the weather how it is now, how do you cope with that? And they said it's just a normal way of life for them in the wintertime. They prepare ahead of time. They try to get, the amount of supplies and goods that they need, and then they just, sit it out and wait it out and do what they can.
Right, they've been doing it for decades.
Absolutely.
Tough people there. Now, when you arrived at the reservation up there, who did you meet and start to work with?
The distribution point is in an old police station that the reservation police department was at one time. Excuse me. So we met with emergency management at that point, and got a game plan. Okay, where do you want us to be at? Where are we going to unload at? And so anyway, we got our trailers backed in, and they had volunteers that were there to help unload it. Some of them were local volunteers. Some of them were actually inmates from their jail, kind of like doing their community service stuff. So we got it unloaded. Our officers helped unload this trailer. We were unloading the water and other goods on pallets because you had people that were coming in to pick up these goods. And then other stuff went inside the center and then was stored in their respected areas. So we met with emergency management, and then a little bit later during the day we met with their local law enforcement also, and just to kind of get a game plan, trying to get information. Okay, what's the weather conditions out there? Well, we knew what the weather conditions were. What were the road conditions like, in areas that we needed to get to? And so we were just kind of getting basic updates from them and just trying to get to know them, and we worked well with both emergency management and local law enforcement.
The reservation is known for being a tough place to live. I mean, communities, things like that, with sometimes desperate people doing desperate things that were illegal for various reasons. Was that of any concern to you, and did the local law enforcement agencies kind of brief you on that?
It really wasn't a concern. We knew what goes on up there, when on the crime side, just not to the extent, of course, what they, from what you hear, you hear the gangs up there, and there are gangs up there on the reservation. You do hear, like you said, people do desperate things in desperate times, and you have a lot of, from what local law enforcement was talking to us about, you have a lot of domestic issues up there, especially in the winter time when everybody is cooped up together at one time, and for a period of time. So, nerves get to going south, and irritation levels go up, and then you have problems. So we really weren't concerned with our safety on it. Of course, we're prepared as law enforcement. No matter where we go, we're prepared to take care of ourselves and defend ourselves if we needed to. But we never had an issue with any criminal issues up there, so to speak.
Were the local folks expressing their appreciation for the effort you had made and bringing this materials up to them when they really needed it? I mean, did they show that to you? Did they interact with you like that?
They did. When we got there and as we were unloading our trailer, like I said, there was people that were coming up and receiving goods, water and other goods that they needed. And we did speak with them, and, they were curious, seeing our markings on our units out there, where were we from, what were we about, why were we there, and they were very appreciative. I mean, the people on the reservation and everybody that we met just welcomed us with open arms. It was a good feeling for us, and we just immediately fit in, and just kind of made that family connection, so to speak.
Were they curious about Mvskoke country here and the culture and, for you and your families?
They did ask some questions, as for, how are we culturally down here, and so we just mentioned to them that how we do things here, and on our traditions, and then they also got into how they do things. Very strong people.
Yes,
They are
very traditional. Too.
Very traditional. Very strong people. They very family oriented. So I told them that in that respect, so are the Creek people. We are very close with family and with our communities, and we have a very good tribe here, and so we wish that we could have really sat down and got more into their culture and their traditions up there, but unfortunately we weren't able to because we had a lot of work to do.
Right, and hands full and everything. Indians have always been curious about each other. Did you find anything particularly amusing about any questions or any interaction you might have had with someone?
Not really. They're a very very proud tribe, and they have endured a lot. As history speaks for itself, it goes way back to when you look at what happened up at Wounded Knee. It's something where the elders up there, they still speak of it, and so it's really eye-opening to what they endured up there. Of course, with us relocating from the east to Oklahoma on the Trail of Tears, it's similar yet different.
Right.
Our people endured tragedies along the trail, and the Sioux people endured what they did up there. So it's similar yet different, and it's just really really humbling, I guess you can say.
Right. Now, I've always known them to be an incredibly proud people, and they're not remiss to make a reference back to Crazy Horse, who was a member of that tribe, and their defeat of Custer at the Greasy Grass, and they're somewhat living that still, I think, and that, and combined with the Wounded Knee incident, it's got to be really an emotional trip for anybody. And then, did you actually talk to them about the Trail of Tears or anything like that?
We did. We had met an elder. We were on our way to the northeastern district on Friday. After the storm had cleared, we went back to try to help get goods out to people in the town of Wanbally, and that's in the Eagles Nest district in the far northeast part of the reservation. But while we were en route, we stopped at this store, and we met a tribal elder by the name of Seymour Little Dog, and we visited with him for a while, and we got to talking about the Wounded Knee part had come up. He talked about his ancestors or his family from way back, that were part of that, and so it was sad to hear, but we did speak about the Trail of Tears, and yet how similar yet how different it was. Our people endured the same as what they did, and so it was really an interesting talk with him. And he was born and raised on in the Pine Ridge reservation area, and he did. Growing up, he said that he had it rough. He's trying to take care of his family, and of course, with what they have up there at that point, it was very little, of course. But he did well for himself. He ended up going to Haskell College there in Lawrence, Kansas. That's where he met his wife, and she's actually from Tahlequah.
Oh, I'll be darned.
And so anyway, he had went to school for that, or had gone to college there, and he actually went to work for NASA as an engineer. And so once he retired from, and I'm not sure if he retired from NASA or what, but he retired, and then he moved back up to Pine Ridge, and that's where him and his wife still reside.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was real interesting talk, to sit and actually talk to an elder was, it meant a lot.
Right.
And that was something that we wish we could have done more of, with more of the elders and more of the citizens that live out there on the reservation, just to kind of, understand where they come from, and, like I said, more of your culture and more of your traditions. How do they live up there? And it would have been interesting to really have that time to speak with them.
Right. Let me ask you about any memories or thoughts or stories you might have that you felt were really touching, that got to your heart, so to speak, either yourself or something one of your other officers related to you. Did you see or hear or feel something like that?
Well, like I said, speaking with this elder, when he got to talking about Wounded Knee, and when he got to talking about, what, some of his family endured and things that he remembers being told as a child as he was growing up, just how the Indian people up there were done, how they were treated. It really opens your eyes.
Yeah.
It really touched us at that point. It touched, a lot of the officers that were with us. It was eye-opening.
Yeah.
It was something that, you hear so much as we grow up, as we went through school, they teach you so much. I feel like that it's not, the truth of the matter of what has occurred in, whether it's on the trail or at Wounded Knee or in other Native American historic events. Things that you're taught in school aren't really as accurate as what it is when you actually sit down and talk to someone that had family that had endured that tragedy.
Well, they always say the winners write the history.
That's what they say.
Yeah. Now, the opportunity to go up and lend somebody some help like this, on just a basic human level. Did any of your crew talk about what their experiences were? Did they share perhaps an incident or something that they saw? Did you hear any of that?
Well, we did discuss it, in our downtime, what, things that we saw, we did see residences that were out in a distance that, just, they were basically like trailer houses that were, you would think that were unlivable, but, folks were, actually have, or living in them, and a lot of these places are small. Some houses aren't any bigger than probably the size of this room that we're sitting in now, and you have 6, 7 people living in it, and so they see that, and then they see the struggles that they have, the resources that they don't have, and the help that we see as a tribe here on the Creek Nation. They don't have that kind of support up there. And so, that was something that I don't want to say was frustrating, but was really, it really touched them, because being up there on our mission, what we wanted to do was help these people and get these people, the most that we could give them. And when you sit back and you look at it, even now, now that we're home, when you sit back and look at it, you really feel for these people. And it's something that my team will take with them for quite some time, probably to the end of their careers. This will be something that they can look back on. There's been a couple of us that have been on the reservation before and have just kind of met folks and kind of looked around and drove around the area. Myself was one of them and Daniel Wynn was the other, but the other 4 have not been up on that. So that was their experience, their first experience on seeing something like that. Even when we went out to the Navajo Nation last year, it was, we seen some things out there that, a true reservation setting, how people live out there, but it was nothing compared to what we saw up in Pine Ridge.
The phrase tar paper shacks comes to mind. Did you see something
Yes, yes, there were several of those, and like I said, there was areas that you could see from a distance that we couldn't get close to just because of how the terrain and how the road conditions were in there. But we did see those type of dwellings out there, yes.
like that? Okay. Well, Chief Hawkins, we're going to take a short pause here and let us recharge our batteries, and we'll be right back. Please stay with us here on Mvskoke Radio.
Hear that? That's the sound of hope being killed by meth. Methamphetamine use is causing huge problems in our community. Hear that? That's the sound of something you can do about it. Events like rodeo, res ball, and family time can help keep kids away from meth.
Talk to your kids. Keep our culture alive. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Learn more at ncai.org.
Who am I? Am I Indian? Just 'cause I'm a girl from the res, don't make things up about me. What if I move away? Then who am I? Some kids try meth just to escape, but then I think about my grandma, my little brother, my beadwork, my poetry, and I think, I like who I am, and I know meth is not for me.
Check out ncai.org, a message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
We're back here on Mvskoke Radio. We're talking with Chief Hawkins of the Lighthorse Tribal Police Department about their recent trip to South Dakota to deliver goods and good feelings, I think, to our brethren and sistren and on the Oglala Sioux reservations up there. The trip up there has got to be kind of telling. It drains you, I think, on the physical side, perhaps the emotional side. Is that the case? If people, your officers talked about that kind of thing?
What we endured on the road. Once we got there, we traveled probably pretty close to 700 miles in the days that we were there, and probably 500 of it was in extreme weather conditions. 60, 70 mile an hour winds, blowing snow, whiteout conditions, drifts over the roadway, and so it was stressful for us. And there was a few times there when we thought we were actually going to be snowbound, and we went into, I guess you can say, survival mode. What happens if we get stuck out here in the middle of nowhere? Mm-hmm. There were no road plows. They had pulled the plows off the road just because the conditions were so bad. And they actually, just to our north, about 20 miles or so, they actually shut Interstate 90 down because the weather was so bad. But we delivered our goods to that district in the northeastern part of the reservation, and then we had to trek back to our hotel, which was probably a good 130 miles away from where we were at. And so it took time, to get there. And once we got back, it was decompression time. I mean, we were stressed. We went through a lot of that, those 2 days driving in those conditions. So Friday was a better day. The storm had cleared. You still had, the winds blowing across the prairie there, and you still had drifting snow on the roadways, but plows were out clearing the roads for us, and so we were able to, get back to that northeast district where we were at. But the emergency manager that works that district, he also plows the roads and everything out there, and there was areas that he just couldn't do it. The snow drifts were high, and you didn't know what was underneath it. I mean, prior to us coming, you had the snow melt had already occurred, and things kind of started drying up. So they were able to see where these washouts were at and how to get goods into areas, and some areas you couldn't get in with a 4-wheel drive pickup because of the soupy mud and all that, and 4-wheelers were not working either until things kind of started drying up. With the amount of snow that they had, and with the amount of snow that we got while we were there, they were utilizing snowmobiles. And so when we actually did go to that northeast district on Thursday morning when we left to take those goods up there, we had offloaded our four-wheelers and put them into our trailer, into our box trailer, and we loaded it's like a big sled. It was an enclosed sled that we were going to utilize to put goods into and just stack it full and then hook it to a snowmobile and pull it to wherever we needed to. But even with that being said, with the amount of snow that was there, the drifting, and still with water in areas and the mud that was out there, we couldn't get in. There was no getting in it, and we weren't about to put our guys and their safety in jeopardy, or those that were working with us, putting their safety in jeopardy by going out over terrain that we knew nothing about and then running off into a 150-foot ravine and somebody getting hurt or worse. So we were advised just what we did was deliver the goods, get them offloaded. We had a game plan in place and what we wanted to do and how we wanted to get stuff out. The organization, I guess, could have been a little bit better initially, but once we got stuff there, we got a game plan in place. But the weather was so bad that we weren't able to get to areas that we needed to. And these people have been reeling for weeks. They do have supplies that they got, that they were able to get prior to the storms, but those were dwindling, and just trying to, figure out. We looked at every avenue on how to get stuff to them, and it just didn't work out. So
we always hear stories like merchants price gouging, jacking the price up on something. $2 loaf of bread all of a sudden is $6. Did you run into any of that when you interacted at all?
I did speak with when we were talking with emergency management, and when we were actually talking with some of the citizens, they said that grocery stores were, you could go in and find a head of lettuce for $4 a head.
Sure.
You find a tube of hamburger meat that would usually, cost you, $15, $20 depending on the size, and they said that they had prices on these big tubes of hamburger meat at $39. So it was not good.
No.
And of course these people, they're on fixed budgets, on whatever whatever their income may be, and they can't afford stuff like that. So they were making do with what they had and doing the best that they could, and they were relying on the goods and services that were coming in from outside organizations that were being sent out to these districts. And I guess what was hard, or what's hard about this, is that you have 9 districts on the reservation, and so all the goods that were being brought into Pine Ridge, and that's their central distribution point. Everything would come into Pine Ridge, and then they would distribute it out to these different districts. Resources, they didn't have a lot of trailers or a lot of ways of transporting these things. They were doing it in the back of pickup trucks, cars. They did get trailers. They do have a few smaller trailers that they could load stuff into and take, but trying to rely on snowmobiles and even four-wheelers once they were able to get out there, and then using also tracked vehicles, like these Arctic cats that have tracks on them. Those were the best means of getting into areas, but seeing the amount of goods and the amount of people, roughly 20 to 28,000 people on the reservation spread out in these 9 districts, and trying to get these goods to them and split up. Some districts would get more because they have more population. Other districts would have less because their population is sparse out there. Kind of like the district that we went to. We were told that they are probably one of the last districts to get anything, any kind of services, any kind of goods. And they said in the storm prior to us coming up, said that they didn't get services or any kind of help on anything for almost 10 days. So these people were really reeling out there.
Right. It sounds like you all were emotionally drained, plus physically exhausted. And this had to have been an expensive project. I mean, somebody's got to pay for this, but you've got the donations, of course. But, trucks need gas, and of course you got guys on the payroll still. With all of that stacked against you, though, I guess in a clumsy way, what I'm probably asking is, was it all worth it? I mean, did you guys sit down and figure out, the impact you might have made in people's lives, and just giving them the knowledge that someone was out there to help them?
It was a very very touching trip for us. We would do it all over again, regardless of what it took. Yeah, there was a cost incurred with this, but we didn't think about that. We had tremendous support from the tribe, and we had the resources that were necessary to do this, and we did what we needed to do. Looking at the help that they got, like I said, it was a lot of non-profit organizations that came in to help. Some of your larger organizations, more or less on your federal side, they brought stuff in, or they came and tried to assist, but it wasn't near what they needed. Yeah. And so the reservation relied on a lot of your nonprofit organizations to come in, and they had organizations come in from Wisconsin, Washington, California. They brought some equipment, some trailers, and they also brought some goods to give to them also. But they were there for a few days and then went home. While we were there, we were the only outside source that was there. They relied heavily on what we had, our resources, our trailers, our trucks, and because trying to, the resources that they have, like I said, are near non-existent. They have stuff, but they really relied on what we had, and I wish that we could have worked with other organizations that I wish would have been there, but unfortunately, we were the only ones there, and unfortunately, nobody else was there, and we made the impact. I felt like that we made a difference in these people's lives.
Were you proud to show the flag, so to speak, knowing that the Mvskoke Creek Nation had come to the assistance of people who need it, and pride in the task?
Couldn't be more proud. Couldn't be more proud of who we are, where we come from, the tribe that we're with, everybody that we're associated with here. Couldn't be more proud to show our seal, our flag, our representation of my department, of the tribe as a whole. Couldn't be more proud.
Okay. Oh, in the time left we've got here, let me ask you a couple of other questions, more from the law and order standpoint rather than this mission. We have seen a huge debate over the open carry law here in Oklahoma. It's been approved, it's been signed, and will go into effect in November. Does that present any potential problems? Do you have feelings about the constitutional right to carry a weapon openly like that?
Well, the Second Amendment says that, everybody has the right to carry a weapon, the right to bear arms. And, we haven't encountered a lot of individuals openly carrying anything, carrying a weapon. Of course, we're cautious, as law enforcement. Anytime you see somebody outside a law enforcement official carrying a gun, it opens your eyes, and it makes you alert and aware of what's going on with that person or what's around you. So now that you have a open carry law, there could be a gun at any point, and anywhere we may be at. So we take into consideration safety-wise. We don't want to see like just being sarcastic, a wild west scenario where you got people getting mad at each other and then having drawdowns in the street. That's, of course, that's not going to be an issue. But we have to be cautious. And, we do know individuals out there. We've dealt with a lot of people, and there may be those that we notice that, if they're carrying, it may be somebody that we dealt with in the past and that we may know of a criminal background on them. Mm-hmm. So that's, we take into consideration all that, but we also look at, the people have the right to protect themselves and defend their property. So, or defend themselves and protect their property. Let me turn that around. So it's just something that we're just cautious with, and we just we'll handle it however we need to.
What about, say, during hunting season? You've got a lot of guns out there, and most every pickup's going to have some sort of hunting equipment and weaponry. And these aren't sidearms. These are big, powerful rifles. So does your caution go up during that period? Do you make any adjustments at all?
We do adjust somewhat. We still, work things as we normally do on an everyday basis. But during hunting season, you kind of become a little more cautious just because, it's these high-power rifles. You get hit by one of those, bullets come out of that, it can penetrate a vest. So, we are more cautious, I think, in that time of the year. But we still, go about our normal everyday business.
Okay. Would you feel better if the concealed carry permits were still the law of the land?
Yes, I would. I think most of us would feel a little bit better if you still had to, go through the process on obtaining your concealed carry. Now, as it is now, if you can go purchase a gun, and of course they'll still do your paperwork and your backgrounds on it, but having to go through a class and everything once you purchase a gun now, you don't have that. You can just put it on your hip and walk out the door with it. So,
right. I've been through the process, and I would feel better personally if people had training and there was some sort of, I don't want to aggravate anybody here, but if there was a process where they had to deal with some sort of legalities in carrying a weapon. But you've mentioned your department has not run into any of those situations.
No, we haven't encountered too many. I know that we have come across some people that we've seen openly carrying, but as for seeing it all the time and everywhere, no, we haven't encountered anything like that, and we haven't encountered anybody not encountering them in a negative way,
Sure.
by them carrying anything. So we'll just handle it, as we need to.
Yeah. I personally would feel better if I knew somebody who carrying a weapon had some training and knew what they were doing with it, rather than, just showing off a big hunk of iron on their hip. Another question here in a different direction. There's been talk of body cams for your department, and I believe it's been discussed in the council. Is that correct?
We had received a grant to purchase body cams for all the officers. We had to do up our policy and procedure on that and then get that passed through the council, which it was passed. And so now we have a couple of officers that are on a trial basis from a company that we're looking at purchasing our cameras through. And so we have 2 officers right now that are utilizing these cameras, and we're just seeing how they work. What kind of picture do they do, how, on the server, how we can save the video to it. With these cameras, it's something where when you go on duty, they're on, and there's no way of manipulating anything on it. You can't turn them off. You can't erase anything because it all goes into the server. So it's definitely officer accountability. You see what the officer is doing. Also, it protects the officer from any kind of false accusations. That, as when officers encounter people out there, they tend to say things that aren't true about that officer. So now these body cams will, protect that officer from that, and liability wise, it will protect the officer and the department and the tribe, from anything that anybody tries to sling out there at us. And then also too, it's used as evidence. It's good form of it's a good resource to get the bad guy, so to speak, prosecuted.
You mentioned the fact that once the camera was on, it would not be able to be turned off. I think that's an important part to maybe highlight for a second here. We've, of course, seen on the news where body cams were playing a part in perhaps some sort of action that you were taking, and then in some cases, all of a sudden, the camera was not on. Somebody had turned it off for whatever reason. That will not be able to happen now with the equipment you're looking at.
No, it won't. Once you go on duty, you'll strap everything on, and then the camera the camera comes on. You'll turn it on, and it's on. And the next time that when you come off duty, when that comes off, and when you stick it into the charger, then that charger acts as the access point that's going to send that video to that server. And so once that video is off that camera, then it will power down itself and charge. So until it goes in that charger, then it stays on. Okay. And so all the video that is on that camera at that point remains on there, and it remains rolling until the end of your shift, and it's all transferred over to that server.
Now, if a situation arose where all of a sudden the camera was covered for whatever reason, or by whatever piece of cloth, or perhaps some weapon got in the way or something like that, would you raise questions about what happened during that period?
We would look back into it. Yes, we would conduct our side of our investigation on it as to why it was covered. You're going to get into officers inevitably are going to get into squabbles. They're going to get into confrontations. They're going to go hands-on with people. And, there's going to be times when they're actually going to be on the ground with them and all that. So, and you'll be able to see on the video at that point, what's going on. It'll all transpire in front of it, and then you can articulate and see, what has occurred. Now, to purposely cover it up, well, then, that's going to throw some flags up, and we're going to want to know why. And,
Sure.
And so there shouldn't be any reason why that camera should be obstructed by anything. Just where we carry our weapons, and, where they may have it placed on their vest, the equipment that they have on their vest may be, it can be positioned around that camera to where nothing would be obscuring the view. So we shouldn't have an issue with it.
Okay. One thing that it is a huge potential issue is jurisdictional questions that could be raised by a decision of the Supreme Court on the Murphy case. If it goes in favor of the Creek Nation position, all of a sudden we're looking at huge jurisdictional potential issues there. Has your department made any plans to deal with that? You've got ideas about recruitment and everything else that goes with it?
We're going to, when that time comes, we will look at our options at that point. We prepared the best that we can prepare for it by going out and obtaining commissions from these other jurisdictional agencies, and we're going to conduct business with the number of officers that we have. And at some point in the future, if this transpires for us, which I feel like that it will, we'll look at those options when that comes. But right now it's business as usual, and if tomorrow the Supreme Court said that we are they ruled in our favor, then we're going to hit the ground running with everything that we have, and we're not going to change a thing. We're going to still conduct business, and we're going to rely on these other agencies to help with what needs to be helped with. But as for our tribal police department, we're still going to protect our citizens the way we protected them, as far back as we have. So
cross that bridge when you come to
we'll
it.
cross the bridge when we come to it.
Okay, Chief Hawkins, I want to thank you so much for answering all these questions and actually taking the time. I know you're still probably a little tired and ready for another nap or something like that. I know I am. We want to thank you. Is there anything else you might want to add? Something you might want to point out real quick?
No. I just like to let the people know out there that contributed to our cause to up to Pine Ridge, Mado. They really were a huge help to us, and we are greatly appreciative of it. And this comes from Steve Wilson, the emergency manager up there at Pine Ridge. I spoke with him this morning, and he wanted to relay a huge thank you to the Creek Nation and to everybody out there that contributed to the cause up there. Everybody is greatly appreciative, and we touched many lives. We helped a lot of folks, and I can speak on behalf of my team, and we're damn proud to have done this.
Yeah. I understand I guess it was an email message that he said, you Southern boys found out what snow was all about.
Us Southern boys found, yeah, that comment. Us Southern boys found out what it was like for a South Dakota winter.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Chief Hawkins. We appreciate you and the job and your team for what they've done. Let me get on to some community messages here real quick in a couple of minutes we've got left. You're invited to a National Award presentation and happy birthday honoring Maxine Wildcat Barnett. That will be coming up Tuesday, April 16th at 6 p.m. That'll occur at the Glenpool Conference Center in Glenpool with a traditional meal provided. Hey, you can't beat that. If you want to see tribal employees beat each other up with rubber balls, here's your chance. The dodgeball tournament, April the 23rd and 25th at 11 to 2 p.m. in the Dome. Employees only, 8-player roster, 16 open spots for a single elimination bracket. So that might be kind of interesting to see the workers here, my co-workers and colleagues, knocking themselves out with a dodgeball. Holdenville Indian Community Center in Holdenville is having a May Arts and Crafts May the 4th on 2019. Doors open at 7:30 for vendors. No charge for vendors. 1 and 2 table chairs will be provided. Concessions, of course. If you're interested in this Arts and Crafts Fair in Holdenville, contact Augusta 405-379-3485. If you're looking for a job, Sofidel hiring event is May the 7th from 10 to 2 at the River Spirit Events Center in the Riverside Parkway complex in Tulsa. Over 150 positions available. And, starting pay is $14.60. Ain't bad. On-site interviews, too, so come prepared. A reminder for our graduates who are interested in having their bio and photo published in the upcoming Mvskoke News and the special graduate edition, the deadline for submissions is May the 10th at 5 p.m. We need a digital photo via email and your information also. So give them a call, 732-7720. Let's see what else. Mvskoke Language Immersion Camp on June the 10th through the 14th at Sequoia State Park in Hulbert. Now, you want to get your applications in by April 12th at 5 p.m., and we know that is a popular event, so check it out. And make sure your children are protected from measles. If you're interested in perhaps a vaccination, get a hold of the Mvskoke Nation Department of Health, and you can probably arrange something. Okay, that does it for me. I want to say, Mabo Hedget Scott, we thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back probably next week. You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Mado.